The clock struck 2:13 a.m., a time when the world usually sleeps in silence. But in the guts of the old apartment block, the elevator groaned with a mechanical ache that sounded almost human. It shouldn't have been moving, yet it halted with a heavy thud at a floor that didn't exist. Security guard Elias stood alone in the lobby, the cold weight of his flashlight in hand. He looked at the control panel. The building blueprints, yellowed and brittle with age, clearly stated the structure ended at 12. There was no 13th floor. Driven by a mix of duty and a creeping dread he couldn't name, Elias stepped into the lift. He pressed the button for the top floor, his finger lingering on the cold plastic. As the car began its ascent, the cables hissed like snakes against the shaft walls. He watched the numbers glow. 10, 11. Then, the overhead lights hummed, flickered, and died. The display in the lift flickered violently. The digital 12 distorted, melting into a jagged 13. The door slid open with a piercing metallic screech that echoed into the void beyond. Elias stepped out, his boots sinking into a rotting carpet that smelled of damp earth and forgotten years. The hallway was bathed in a sickly, jaundiced yellow light that seemed to pulse like a dying heart. Dozens of doors lined the corridor, stretching into an impossible distance. Each one was cracked open just a few inches, revealing nothing but absolute blackness within. Silence pressed against his eardrums, heavy and suffocating. He moved forward, his flashlight beam cutting through the thick dust motes that danced in the stagnant air. Every step felt like a betrayal of logic. He reached toward the nearest door, his heart beginning a slow, rhythmic thud against his ribs. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to stretch toward him. From the deep shadows behind him, a voice drifted through the air. It was the voice of a child, thin and brittle as dry leaves. "You are not supposed to be here," it whispered. The words weren't spoken into the room, but seemed to vibrate directly inside his skull. Elias spun around, his flashlight beam swinging wildly. The elevator was gone. In its place stood a solid, seamless brick wall, as if the lift had never existed at all. Panic, sharp and cold, flared in his chest. He was trapped in a place that shouldn't be, pursued by a voice he couldn't find. He began to run, his breath coming in ragged gasps. At the far end of the hallway, one single door stood apart from the others. Unlike the rest, it was firmly, resolutely shut. It felt like a magnet, pulling him toward a truth he wasn't ready to face. He approached the final door, his hand trembling so violently he almost dropped his light. The brass handle was tarnished, cold enough to sting his skin. Just above it, a small nameplate glinted under the artificial yellow glow. Elias leaned in, his eyes squinting against the glare. The letters were engraved in a sharp, formal script. It read, Elias Thorne, his own name. The realization hit him like a physical blow. This wasn't just a hidden floor. It was a destination designed for him, before he could scream. Before he could even turn the handle, the hallway lights vanished instantly. The darkness was total, absolute, and heavy. He felt himself falling, not through the floor, but through the very fabric of reality. He collapsed, the sound of his own heartbeat the last thing he heard before the world dissolved into a void. There was no sound, no light, only the sensation of being erased. Elias woke with a start, his face pressed against the cold metal floor of the elevator. He was back on the ground level. His watch read exactly 2:13 a.m. The next morning, driven by a desperate need for proof, he dug through the basement archives. Behind the official layout, he found a single, yellowed page labeled Floor 13. It was crossed out with thick, aggressive black ink, as if someone had tried to murder the very idea of it. Without a word, Elias placed his badge on the manager's desk and walked out into the daylight. He never returned to the night shift. He never looked back at the building. Some secrets are buried for a reason, hidden in the gaps between the floors we know. If you found a floor that was never meant to exist, would you dare to step out, or would you keep the doors closed?